All right, history buffs and truth seekers, prepare yourselves. In the colossal chronicles of human conflict, there are the clashes etched in steel and blood, the epic battles that thunder through history books. But then there are the campaigns waged in the silent depths, in the creeping shadows, where the weapon isn't a bomb's roar or a bullet's whistle, but the insidious power of a whisper, a perfectly calibrated, brilliant lie. This, my friends, is the astonishing saga of one such campaign, a deception so wildly audacious, so utterly improbable in its conception and execution, that it stands as an enduring monument to human ingenuity in the face of what seemed like insurmountable odds. This is the spellbinding story of Operation Mincemeat, a breathtaking, almost unbelievable chapter ripped straight from the heart of World War II. It's a tale where a dead man, a meticulously crafted identity, and a briefcase brimming with strategic falsehoods conspired not just to influence, but to fundamentally alter the very course of history. Imagine, if you will, the year 1943. The world itself is a churning crucible of fire and fury, embroiled in its second devastating global conflict. Across continents and oceans, millions are locked in a desperate existential struggle for survival and supremacy. On the brutal Eastern Front, the titanic, grinding clash between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union consumes lives on an unimaginable scale, bleeding both colossal nations bone dry. The ferocity of that fighting, the sheer, staggering volume of men and materiel engaged, represented nothing less than the largest land war in all of human history. Every single strategic decision made, every diversion of resources, carried with it the cataclysmic potential for untold consequences. In the vastness of the Pacific, American and Japanese forces are locked in a brutal, island-hopping campaign, each coral atoll and volcanic rock stained indelibly with the blood of soldiers and Marines. A stark testament to the unforgiving nature of naval and amphibious warfare. But it is in the sun-drenched ancient waters of the Mediterranean where a pivotal strategic decision now looms, a choice that could either dramatically accelerate the Allied path to victory or condemn countless more to the unimaginable horrors of an extended war. The Allied powers, having successfully dislodged Axis forces from the treacherous sands of North Africa, after a series of hard-fought grinding campaigns, culminating in the decisive victory of Operation Torch and the subsequent Tunisia campaign, now cast their gaze northward, across the sparkling blue sea. With Axis forces definitively ejected from the African continent, a new front was not just inevitable, it was screamingly obvious. Their next logical objective was glaringly apparent to both friend and foe alike. Sicily, this triangular island, the largest in the Mediterranean, was far more than just a piece of land. It was a strategic jewel, a dagger pointed menacingly at the soft underbelly of Axis Europe. Positioned directly between North Africa and the Italian mainland, its capture would provide a critical, irreplaceable stepping stone for an eventual invasion of Italy itself, potentially knocking a key Axis power out of the war altogether. Such an earth-shattering event would undoubtedly have a profound ripple effect across the entire globe, forcing Germany to divert even more desperately needed resources away from the relentless meat grinder of the Eastern Front, thereby relieving immense pressure on the beleaguered Soviets. Moreover, securing Sicily would irrevocably open up vital shipping lanes through the Mediterranean, allowing Allied convoys to bypass the treacherous German U-boat-infested routes around Africa, drastically reducing crucial travel times and the ever-present risk of catastrophic losses. The operational plan for this monumental invasion, codenamed Operation Husky, was already taking formidable shape, a massive undertaking involving hundreds of thousands of troops, thousands of ships, and logistical challenges that defied easy comprehension. However, the very obviousness of Sicily as the next logical target presented an immense, almost paralyzing challenge. German and Italian intelligence services were anything but naive. They were highly sophisticated, with extensive networks of spies and keen analytical capabilities, and they, too, recognized Sicily's critical, undeniable importance. They had already begun to fortify the island with alarming speed and efficiency, reinforcing its coastal defenses with heavy artillery batteries and machine gun nests, preparing airfields for their dreaded Luftwaffe squadrons, and deploying experienced, battle-hardened fighting divisions, including elite elements of Hermann Göring's formidable Panzer Division. A direct, head-on assault on Sicily promised to be nothing short of a bloodbath, a grinding, monumentally costly engagement that could result in tens of thousands of Allied casualties, potentially bogging down the entire Allied war effort for months, if not longer. The sun-drenched beaches would be heavily defended, the picturesque towns transformed into fortified strongholds, the resistance fierce, protracted, and utterly brutal, chillingly reminiscent of the costly, nightmarish landings at Gallipoli in the First World War. The Allied command, acutely aware of the human cost of such frontal assaults and deeply mindful of public opinion back home, desperately sought a way to mitigate this devastating prospect. They needed a miracle, a grand, theatrical deception to divert German attention, to thin their formidable defenses, to transform a seemingly impossible task into a manageable one, with an acceptable, tolerable human cost. This desperate, urgent need for a strategic advantage led, inevitably, to the secretive, labyrinthine corridors of British intelligence, to a clandestine world where the most valuable currency was not gold, but information, not bullets, but misdirection, and the subtle, often terrifying art of psychological manipulation. The demand was urgent, driven by Prime Minister Winston Churchill himself, who famously implored his intelligence chiefs to attract the enemy's attention to the wrong quarter, to make them look anywhere but where the real blow would fall. Specifically, the almost impossible task fell to a small, highly specialized department within the British Secret Intelligence Service, MI5, known simply as Section 17M, or, more formally, the London Controlling Section. This was not the realm of dashing spies, exploding gadgets, and daring commando raids, but of brilliant, often eccentric, minds utterly dedicated to the craft of deception. Their mission was profoundly simple in concept, but immensely complex and terrifying in execution. To utterly deceive the enemy, to plant insidious seeds of doubt and confusion, to make the Germans believe what was unequivocally false, and conversely, to disbelieve what was glaringly true. The very survival of an entire Allied invasion, and potentially the lives of countless young men, hung precariously in the balance of their intellectual cunning. The audacious concept they began to develop was born from the fertile, unconventional mind of Lieutenant Commander Ewan Montague, a brilliant naval intelligence officer and a former barrister. a man accustomed to constructing meticulous arguments and dissecting truth from falsehood. Montague, a man of sharp intellect and an unflappable, calm demeanor, understood instinctively the psychological nuances of deception. Alongside him was squadron leader Charles Cholmondeley of MI5, an eccentric but equally sharp intelligence officer whose unconventional, out-of-the-box thinking often provided the spark for their most daring and improbable ideas. Together, they started to brainstorm the seemingly impossible. How could they possibly convince the highly suspicious German High Command, and more importantly, Adolf Hitler himself, a man notorious for his paranoid distrust of his own intelligence apparatus, yet ironically prone to believing information that confirmed his own biases, that the massive Allied buildup in North Africa was not aimed at Sicily, but at other, far less strategically crucial targets in the Mediterranean? Their initial ideas were varied and often wildly imaginative, exploring everything from generating false radio traffic to planting carefully disseminated rumors. But one audacious concept began to take terrifying yet exhilarating shape. A scheme as macabre as it was ingenious, one that would leverage the undeniable finality of death itself to sow strategic chaos. A dead body. But this wouldn't be just any dead body. This body would be given a name, a rank, a meticulously constructed life story, and crucially, a briefcase containing a series of utterly convincing, deliberately misleading fake documents. These documents would lay out a fabricated invasion plan, pointing decisively and unequivocally towards Greece and Sardinia as the intended Allied targets, while subtly but firmly dismissing Sicily as merely a diversionary feint, a place to stir up trouble. The sheer, audacious brilliance of the plan lay not just in its macabre simplicity, but in its audacious premise. Using the mundane, undeniable reality of death, the discovery of an accidental casualty, to sow strategic chaos at the very highest levels of enemy command. The very unexpectedness of such a discovery, divorced from any overt act of espionage, was its greatest, most insidious strength. The success of such an operation, with stakes so monumentally high, hinged on an almost obsessive, almost pathological attention to detail. Every single aspect had to be perfect, every potential inconsistency eliminated with surgical precision, every loose end meticulously tied. The deception had to be absolutely watertight, capable of withstanding the most rigorous, skeptical scrutiny from highly trained, ruthless German intelligence experts. The stakes were nothing less than monumental. The lives of countless Allied soldiers, the success or failure of a pivotal invasion that could shorten the war by months or even a year, and ultimately the entire trajectory of the global conflict itself. It was a gamble of epic proportions, relying entirely on the meticulously crafted illusion surrounding a single unfortunate individual. It was a desperate race against time, against a cunning and formidable enemy, and against the immense complexities of creating a fiction so real, so utterly believable, that it defied the very concept of belief. Before we dive deeper into the astonishing intricacies of how this operation unfolded, and the remarkable, almost theatrical efforts made to construct this elaborate, deadly deception, take a brief moment to hit that subscribe button if you're finding this deep dive into untold military history as fascinating and compelling as we do. Your support is truly invaluable and helps us continue to bring more incredible stories like Operation Mincemeat to light, stories of ingenuity, daring, and the profound human cost of war. Now, let's continue with the extraordinary, chilling tale of the man who would become Major William Martin. The first and arguably most critical challenge, steeped in ethical complexities and shrouded in the deepest secrecy, was to find the right body. This was no small feat, nor was it a decision taken lightly or without immense deliberation. The requirements were stringent, dictating both the physical attributes and the circumstances of death. It needed to be male, of an appropriate age and physique, to plausibly pass as a Royal Marines officer, ideally someone between 25 and 35 years old, fit, but not overly muscular. And crucially, it had to show no visible signs of violence or obvious trauma that would immediately raise suspicion. Ideally, the cause of death needed to be entirely consistent with someone lost at sea, such as drowning or severe hypothermia, suggesting an unfortunate accident rather than foul play or murder. This was not a task to be undertaken lightly, requiring extreme discretion, unwavering secrecy, and a certain degree of moral fortitude from those involved in this most unusual procurement. The team knew with chilling certainty that if the body's condition raised even the slightest, most fleeting suspicion, the entire elaborate multi-million-dollar plan would instantly unravel. After careful and clandestine searches through the grim anonymity of London's various morgues, Montague and his dedicated team finally found their candidate. The chosen individual was Glyndwr Michael, a homeless man from Wales who had tragically died in London from ingesting rat poison, a solitary and anonymous end. His death was officially recorded as due to pneumonia, carefully omitting the actual cause of poisoning to avoid any complications or difficult questions. With no known family to claim his body, it was quietly released for this extraordinary, top-secret purpose. The selection of Michael was crucial. His physical characteristics, particularly the state of his lungs, which were consistent with prolonged immersion in water, made him an ideal candidate to convincingly portray a victim of an aircraft crash at sea, a scenario that perfectly fit the narrative they intended to weave. The cold storage of the morgue also helped preserve the body in a suitable condition for the deception, buying them precious time. With the vessel for their elaborate deception finally secured, the next phase involved crafting a complete, utterly believable identity for this unfortunate individual. He would be reborn for the harrowing purposes of war as Major William Martin of the Royal Marines. A meticulous, deeply immersive backstory was created for Major Martin, designed to be compelling, relatable, and thoroughly resistant to the most intense enemy scrutiny. He was given a personality, a history, a network of relationships, and the everyday minutiae of a real person's life, creating a three-dimensional character out of thin air. This wasn't just about making him an officer, it was about making him a person that a German intelligence officer, no matter how cynical or experienced, would believe had genuinely lived and breathed. His personal effects were curated with an almost theatrical flair, an unparalleled attention to the most minute human detail. Major Martin was given a fictitious fiancée, a sweetheart named Pam, complete with a charming, slightly faded photograph and a collection of tender, subtly revealing love letters. These letters were not merely romantic tokens. They carefully alluded to his work, his responsibilities, and the immense weight of his wartime duties, subtly reinforcing his professional identity without explicitly stating any top-secret information. One letter from Pam even expressed a mild, relatable complaint about his late hours, hinting at his demanding schedule and clandestine work. In his pockets, he carried seemingly mundane items that, paradoxically, contributed significantly to his persona. Theater ticket stubs for a recent West End show, dated just days before his death, suggesting a man enjoying a brief, well-deserved leave. A rather stern letter from his bank manager about an overdue overdraft, adding a touch of common human frailty and financial worry. A collection of loose change, a set of keys, and a wallet containing a small amount of cash. Each item was painstakingly chosen to paint a vivid picture of a real, living, breathing individual, complete with minor financial worries and social engagements, making him relatable, utterly authentic, and, most importantly, not a caricature or a cardboard cutout. The meticulousness extended even to the subtle aging of the ticket stubs and the slight natural crinkle in the bank letter, making them appear used rather than pristine or newly printed. The uniform itself was a masterpiece of deliberate detail. A perfectly fitted Royal Marines uniform, complete with regulation boots, identity tags, 2, 1 silver and 1 copper, standard British military practice for easier removal and identification, a wristwatch, and even a humble pencil sharpener, was meticulously prepared. The pockets were carefully filled with the everyday detritus one would expect of a British officer on active duty. A half-smoked packet of inexpensive cigarettes, a book of matches from a distinct London club, a comb, and a few ration coupons. Every single element, from the deliberate wear and tear on the uniform to the precise contents of his pockets, was designed to withstand rigorous examination and appear entirely natural to any German intelligence officer or forensic expert who might discover the body and its belongings. The objective was to create such a compelling and multi-layered narrative around Major Martin that any interrogator, however skeptical or seasoned, would be completely convinced of his authenticity, believing him to be a genuine casualty of war, tragically washed ashore by cruel fate and the unforgiving sea. But the true prize, the undeniable linchpin of the entire operation, was the briefcase. This was no ordinary attaché case. It was a specially weighted, robustly waterproof container, ingeniously designed to float reliably and eventually wash ashore, ideally with its contents entirely intact and perfectly legible. Inside, carefully nestled amongst Major Martin's fabricated personal effects, were the fabricated documents intended to profoundly and strategically mislead the German High Command. These were not merely crude, hastily forged papers. They were masterpieces of misinformation, meticulously crafted to appear absolutely genuine, embodying the highest, most sophisticated form of strategic deception. The creation of these documents was an art form in itself, requiring a deep, almost intuitive understanding of German intelligence methods and expectations. The undeniable centerpiece of these documents was a personal, highly sensitive letter from Lieutenant General Sir Archibald Nye, the Vice Chief of the Imperial General Staff, addressed to General Sir Harold Alexander, the Commander-in-Chief of the Allied forces in Tunisia. Nye was a real, high-ranking officer, lending immediate, undeniable credibility. The letter, penned with the appropriate military jargon and carefully chosen ambiguities, discussed the upcoming invasion, but with a crucial, deceptive twist. It strongly implied that the main Allied thrust, the real object, would be aimed at Greece and Sardinia, with Sicily explicitly mentioned as merely a potential diversionary target, a place to stir up trouble and draw attention away. The language used was deliberately informal, almost conversational, giving it the intimate ring of a private communication between senior officers discussing top-secret matters, implying a level of trust and candor that formal, stiff orders would inherently lack. This was a critical psychological element. Formal, stiff orders might have raised suspicion due to their very perfection, but a seemingly casual letter between trusted colleagues felt far more authentic, more trustworthy, and thus infinitely more convincing. It shrewdly tapped into the German belief that the British were often informal in their communications, making it feel less like an official document and more like genuine insider information. Another key document reinforcing the false narrative was a letter from Lord Louis Mountbatten, the Chief of Combined Operations, addressed to Admiral of the Fleet Sir Andrew Cunningham, the Commander of Naval Forces in the Mediterranean. This letter also subtly, but firmly, hinted at significant operations being planned for Greece and Sardinia, further solidifying the deliberately misleading picture. Mountbatten, another prominent and widely recognized figure, added another undeniable layer of authenticity. These letters were not hastily scribbled forgeries. They were drafted by some of the most skilled wordsmiths and intelligence analysts in the entire British service. Individuals who possessed a profound understanding of military communication, protocol, and, crucially, how to embed deception within seemingly innocuous phrases that would resonate deeply with an enemy analyst. To further enhance their authenticity, the papers were subtly aged, given a slight touch of wear and tear, and even stained with a hint of seawater, to make them appear as if they had been carried by Major Martin for a period of time, adding another layer of realism and organic credibility. The meticulous planning extended to the precise drop-off location. The plan was to release Major Martin's body off the coast of Huelva, Spain. Spain, while officially neutral in the war, was known to harbor a significant and highly active network of German intelligence agents, particularly the Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service, led in that region by an experienced operative named Major Karl Erich Kulenthal. The hope was that Spanish fishermen would discover the body, immediately inform local authorities, and that these authorities, known for their varying sympathies, would either directly hand the documents over to the Germans or, more likely, allow German agents to surreptitiously access and photograph the contents before ceremoniously returning them to the British. The Spanish government, under the authoritarian rule of Generalissimo Francisco Franco, maintained a delicate, precarious balance of neutrality. But strong pro-Axis sentiments were prevalent in many regional administrative bodies, particularly in military and naval circles, making their coastline an ideal and highly strategic drop-off point for such a sensitive operation. The location also strategically placed the crash site within a plausible flight path from Allied airfields in North Africa, adding another layer of believable circumstance. On April 18, 1943, the British submarine HMS Seraph, a modern and stealthy vessel under the unflappable command of Lieutenant Bill Jewell, departed from Holy Loch, Scotland. Aboard, secured in a specially designed, hermetically sealed container filled with dry ice to preserve the body and prevent any decomposition, was the remains of Glyndwr Michael, now playing his final, most critical role as the fictitious Major William Martin. The perilous journey through the U-boat-infested waters of the Atlantic, carefully evading enemy patrols, was fraught with tension and constant danger. The success of the entire elaborate operation rested precariously on this final delicate act of delivery. The crew of the Seraph, though loyal and disciplined, were kept completely in the dark about their passenger, aware only that they were transporting a top-secret cargo under extreme security, utterly unaware of the chilling yet vital nature of their silent passenger. In the pre-dawn hours of April 30th, 1943, the HMS Seraph reached a predetermined point approximately 1,500 yards, or about 1.4 kilometers, off the coast of Huelva, Spain. Under the cloak of absolute darkness and in strict radio silence, to avoid any detection, the crew performed their solemn, unusual duty. The container holding Major Martin's body was carefully brought on deck and reverently opened. The body, dressed impeccably in its Royal Marines uniform, wearing 2 identity tags, one silver, one copper, standard British military practice for easier removal and identification, and, crucially, clutching the briefcase containing the false documents, with a specially weighted chain secured to his wrist, was gently slipped into the cold, dark waters of the Atlantic. A short, silent prayer was offered by Lieutenant Jewell and his officers for the man who would help change the war. The hope, the entire premise of the operation, was that the prevailing currents would carry him inevitably towards the Spanish coast, where he would be discovered, and his fabricated story would begin its intended, world-altering journey into the heart of the German High Command. The agonizing waiting game for Montague, Cholmondeley, and the entire Deception Committee back in London then began. Every intelligence report, every diplomatic cable from Spain, every coded message was scrutinized with bated breath and rising tension. Days turned into a week of nerve-wracking suspense. The fear was constant that the body might simply drift out to sea, forever lost, or that the documents might be overlooked, dismissed as inconsequential, or, worse, dismissed as a clumsy, amateurish forgery. Finally, on May 3, 1943, the crucial news arrived. A message that sent a ripple of relief through the clandestine halls of British intelligence. A local Spanish fisherman named José Antonio Rey Maria discovered the body of a British officer floating near Punta Umbria, just outside Huelva. Local authorities were immediately notified, and the body was brought ashore. The mission's first and most critical hurdle had been cleared. Major Martin had arrived, and the show, the grand deception, was about to truly begin. What followed was a tense and intricate diplomatic dance, orchestrated meticulously by the British. Upon learning of the discovery, the British Embassy in Madrid, feigning distress and genuine concern over the loss of a valuable officer and his supposedly highly sensitive papers, officially requested the immediate return of Major Martin's body and all his personal belongings, especially the briefcase. This carefully orchestrated diplomatic pressure was designed to create an air of genuine urgency and profound importance around the documents, subtly but powerfully encouraging the Germans to be even more eager to get their hands on what the British appeared so desperately keen to retrieve. The British knew instinctively that if they didn't make a fuss, the Germans might not bother to investigate, assuming it was simply another unfortunate casualty. as predicted with chilling accuracy. The Spanish authorities, while officially neutral, were significantly permeable to German influence, both covert and overt. The local officials, particularly Colonel José López Barrero, a known German sympathizer who was head of naval intelligence in Huelva, ensured that the briefcase and its contents eventually found their way into German hands, or at least were made accessible to them under the convenient guise of an official examination. The Abwehr, Germany's military intelligence service, with agents deeply embedded within the Spanish military and police apparatus, wasted no time in seizing what they believed was an intelligence coup of monumental proportions. Major Kuhlenthal himself personally supervised the entire delicate process. They carefully, systematically, and secretly photographed every single document in the briefcase, using a specialized miniature camera, their agents meticulously examining each paper for any sign of forgery or deception before the briefcase was ceremoniously returned to the British, seemingly untouched. The German analysis was excruciatingly thorough, bordering on obsessive. They subjected the documents to every conceivable test known to their sophisticated intelligence apparatus. They scrutinized the letters' wording, the precise dates, the signatures, the quality of the paper, even the subtle watermarks. They cross-referenced names and ranks, checking them against their own extensive intelligence databases for any discrepancies. They analyzed the subtle personal details of Major Martin's life, the tender love letters from Pam, the embarrassing bank overdraft notice, the theater tickets, the keys, the cigarettes, concluding that these seemingly mundane details added an undeniable layer of human authenticity, utterly convincing them that Major Martin was a real, unfortunate individual, a genuine casualty of war, rather than a fabricated entity. Crucially, every single aspect of the deception pointed to the documents being absolutely genuine. They found no trace of forgery, no telltale signs of a plant, no indication of a trick. The Abwehr, convinced they had struck gold, reported their findings with immense, unshakable confidence. They had intercepted top-secret Allied invasion plans, a true stroke of luck, a gift from the sea. The comprehensive report from German intelligence, brimming with the certainty of a major intelligence victory, swiftly made its way up the chain of command, eventually landing on the desk of the Führer himself, Adolf Hitler. Hitler, known for his deep-seated distrust of his own intelligence services, often favoring his intuition over their detailed analysis, yet paradoxically prone to believing information that confirmed his pre-existing biases, reviewed the findings personally and with intense, focused interest. The information contained in the documents, specifically the suggestion of Allied invasions of Greece and Sardinia, aligned perfectly with some of his existing strategic anxieties and long-held beliefs about the Mediterranean. He had long been concerned about the vulnerability of the Balkans and the Aegean Sea, seeing them as a potential soft underbelly of his sprawling empire, and a logical target for the British, who had strong historical interests in the region. Convinced by the overwhelming authenticity of the information, which chimed perfectly with his own strategic hunches and paranoid fears, Hitler issued immediate and decisive orders. He commanded the urgent reinforcement of German forces in Greece and Sardinia, diverting significant, much-needed resources to those areas. Crucially, he diverted critical panzer divisions, experienced infantry units, and valuable Luftwaffe air assets from Sicily, believing with absolute conviction that the upcoming Allied invasion there was, precisely as the document suggested, merely a clever feint, a diversionary tactic designed to pull German strength away from the real invasion sites. This was the moment of truth for Operation Mincemeat, the stunning culmination of months of meticulous planning, intricate fabrication, and a gamble of truly epic proportions. The dead man had delivered his message, and Adolf Hitler had bought it, hook, line, and sinker, sealing the fate of his own defenses on Sicily. The impact of this monumental deception was immediate, profound, and strategically decisive. As the actual Allied invasion of Sicily, Operation Husky, commenced on July 10, 1943, Allied forces encountered significantly lighter resistance than originally anticipated. German defenses in Sicily were demonstrably weaker, their garrisons spread thin, many of their most experienced and vital units having been redeployed, at Hitler's direct command, to the distant shores of Greece and Sardinia. The diversion was so astonishingly effective that an entire panzer division, the 1st Parachute Hermann Göring Panzer Division, which could have wreaked absolute havoc on the beaches and inflicted devastating casualties, was still awaiting orders in France, having been earmarked for Sardinia, too far away to make a difference. The sun-drenched beaches of Sicily, though still fiercely contested and requiring bloody, intense fighting, were not the impregnable fortresses the Allies had so grimly feared. The initial landings were more successful than even the most optimistic projections, and the subsequent Allied advance inland proceeded with greater speed and mercifully fewer casualties. While the Sicilian campaign certainly involved intense and bloody fighting over several weeks, a grim toll of both Allied and Axis lives, the strategic advantage gained through Operation Mincemeat was undeniable and immeasurable. It saved countless Allied lives, significantly reduced the duration of the campaign, and accelerated the capture of the strategically vital island, paving the way for the invasion of mainland Italy and ultimately the downfall of Mussolini's fascist regime. The success of Operation Mincemeat stands as one of the most brilliant and effective deception operations in the entire history of warfare, a true testament to the mind-bending power of misdirection, psychological manipulation, and the boundless human capacity for invention, even in the direst circumstances. It vividly demonstrated that sometimes the most effective weapon is not a bullet or a bomb, but a meticulously crafted illusion, a narrative so compelling, so utterly believable, that even the most suspicious and paranoid enemy is compelled to believe it. The lives of Glyndwr Michael, the homeless man whose identity was borrowed, and Major William Martin, the entirely fictional officer he became, were tragically and triumphantly intertwined in this remarkable act of wartime trickery, leading to a victory born not of direct combat, but of cunning clandestine brilliance. It was a profound triumph of the mind over brute force, a testament to the power of a perfectly executed lie. The true story of Operation Mincemeat remained one of Britain's most closely guarded secrets for many, many years after the war, a testament to the extraordinary effectiveness and continued sensitivity of British counterintelligence operations. Those involved were sworn to lifelong secrecy, carrying the weight of their astonishing secret for decades. The full, astonishing details of the operation were only declassified in the 1990s, finally revealing the incredible lengths to which the Allies went to achieve victory in the darkest hours of the war. Ewan Montague, the undeniable mastermind behind much of the operation, later immortalized the events in his gripping book, The Man Who Never Was, which was subsequently adapted into a highly successful and critically acclaimed film, and more recently, a major motion picture, further cementing the legend of Major Martin and the extraordinary lengths to which nations will go to win a war. Operation Mincemeat is far more than just a fascinating historical anecdote. It serves as a profound case study in psychological warfare, a master class in how to manipulate an enemy's perceptions, biases, and, ultimately, their critical decision-making processes. It highlights the paramount importance of understanding not just the enemy's military capabilities, but also their psychological profile, their deeply held fears, their strategic doctrines, and their existing anxieties. By cleverly tapping into Adolf Hitler's long-standing concerns about the vulnerability of the Balkans and his inherent distrust of his own military commanders, the Allies were able to make a completely fabricated story seem not just plausible, but strategically compelling and utterly irresistible. It demonstrated unequivocally that human intelligence, when applied ingeniously, could often outmaneuver overwhelming military might and sheer force of numbers. The enduring legacy of Operation Mincemeat continues to resonate powerfully in modern military strategy and intelligence operations. The fundamental principles of deception, misdirection, the creation of believable false narratives, and the shrewd exploitation of enemy biases remain absolutely vital tools in the arsenals of nations around the world. From sophisticated cyber warfare campaigns to intricate information operations, the timeless lessons learned from Mincemeat are still being applied and refined today. It serves as a potent and timeless reminder that war is not solely a brutal clash of arms and overwhelming force, but also, and often more crucially, a profound battle of wits, a complex contest of minds where ingenuity, cunning, and strategic brilliance can be as devastatingly effective as any military might. So, the next time you reflect upon the pivotal turning points of World War II, or consider the subtle, often unseen forces that shape global conflicts, remember the incredible, almost unbelievable tale of Major William Martin, the man who never was, the corpse that fooled Hitler. His silent, extraordinary mission, born of desperate necessity and executed with unparalleled cunning, played a truly pivotal role in shortening the war, saving countless Allied lives and irrevocably altering the trajectory of one of history's most devastating conflicts. It is a powerful and enduring reminder that sometimes the greatest heroes are those who operate in the deepest shadows, whose most profound victories are won not on the bloody battlefields, but in the clandestine world of espionage, deception, and the boundless limits of human intellect. A quiet victory, won by a nameless man, but a victory nonetheless, that echoes through the ages. And that, my friends, brings us to the conclusion of another captivating journey into the depths of military history. If you found this astonishing story as compelling, insightful, and, frankly, as mind-blowing as we did, please take a moment to hit that like button, share this video with fellow history enthusiasts, and, most importantly, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more untold stories of courage, strategy, and the enduring power of the human spirit in wartime. Your support truly helps us continue to bring these incredible narratives to life. We genuinely appreciate you watching, and we'll see you in the next video.